Today is day 305 of the October 7th war and the Hamas hostage crisis. The people of Israel are waiting. Will the criminal caliphate in Iran try to murder our families? Will they target civilians as they've announced they plan to? Iran's proxy army in Lebanon, Hezbollah, keeps trying to murder us. It fires at us every day, 7,000 rockets, missiles, and drones since October 8th. The U.S. is reportedly warning of a possible two-wave attack, one from Hezbollah and one directly from Iran and its other proxy armies in places like Syria, Iraq, and Yemen. Yesterday, Iran's proxies in Iraq attacked Americans. They fired rockets at a U.S. base and seriously injured U.S. personnel. Because as Iran says, Israel is the little Satan, but America is the great Satan. Iran's proxy Hezbollah said it clearly. Israel is just a tool. This war is actually about America. Our war is your war. Our safety is your safety. Our victory is your victory. Iran wants to hurt Israel to hurt America. That's why it's so important that the U.S. is preparing to support Israel in if Iran attacks. Supporting Israel is supporting the world's security. The U.S. is building up a nearly unprecedented military presence to help blunt any Iranian attack, like what it sent after October 7th when Hezbollah was considering joining the fray against Israel. Aircraft carriers, missile defense ships, advanced F-22 stealth fighters. The U.S. is sending a clear message to Iran. Don't. Don't mess with our ally Israel. We have its back. In news outside of Iran, we now know straight from the UN itself that UNRWA staff took part in the Hamas October 7th massacre. That's right, the UN's taxpayer-funded employees took part in the deadliest day for Jewish people since the Nazi Holocaust. UNRWA denied it. UNRWA mocked the accusation. Now, UNRWA boss Felipe Lazzarini was forced to admit what we all knew. And even now, Lazzarini is still hiding the truth, that UNRWA is a Hamas front group. Lazzarini wants you to believe that there were only 9 UNRWA participants in the October 7th rape, murder, and kidnapping rampage. But Lazzarini only even investigated 19 UNRWA staff members and found half were directly involved. That admission must include UNRWA staff we all saw on video half a year ago snatching Jonathan Samorano's corpse into a UN vehicle. And it must include UNRWA staff recorded bragging, "I have female captives, I caught one, I'm inside with the Jews." And it must include UNRWA staff who imprisoned hostages in their Gaza homes, according to the hostages who were held by them. Lazzarini, in the same breath as admitting UNRWA staff took part in October 7th, has the audacity to say that UNRWA is continuing life-saving work with more neutrality than anyone else. Life-saving work? On October 7th, it only did life-taking work, the most Jewish lives taken in one day since the Holocaust. Lazzarini wants your government to keep handing over your cash to the Hamas front, UNRWA. He wants to take your monies to subsidize Hamas's forever war on the Jewish state. Lazzarini is still covering up UNRWA's Hamas complicity. Why hasn't he released the full report? UNRWA must let us see the entire report, not just a press release. Lazzarini wants you to forget about the hundreds of hardened Hamas terrorists on UNRWA staff, about the thousands of Hamas affiliates, 10% of Gazan UNRWA staff, about the hundreds of thousands of Gazans indoctrinated to hate and murder in UNRWA schools, and about the millions of dollars diverted from UNRWA to Hamas's genocidal mission. Lazzarini wants you to believe that UNRWA only has 9 bad apples, as if even that would be okay, but to forget the Hamas intelligence headquarters underneath the UNRWA headquarters, literally drawing power from the UN complex above. It's true that not all Hamas murderers worked for UNRWA, but nearly all Hamas murderers were educated in UNRWA schools. UNRWA used your taxpayer funds to educate the monsters that gang-raped a man on October 7th. And now Hamas's UNRWA graduates have been using those same UNRWA schools to carry out their attacks. Back in 2004, 20 years ago, UNRWA's then head said, I'm sure that there are Hamas members on the UNRWA payroll, and I don't see that as a crime. But UNRWA complicity with Hamas was a crime in 2004 and is a crime today, as is Lazzarini complicity. Investigate UNRWA. Investigate Lazzarini for aiding and abetting Hamas's murder. Tell your leaders, do not fund crime. Do not fund Hamas via UNRWA. International funding for UNRWA is a subsidy to Hamas terror. Once and for all, defund UNRWA, defund Hamas. In the meantime, Israel's soldiers are destroying Hamas. An estimated 17,000 terrorists have been killed so far. That's over half of Hamas's fighting force. Hamas commanders like Mohammed Deif and Ismail Haniyeh have been killed, and others like Yahya Sinwar are hiding in the dark. Hamas's ability to smuggle in weapons from Egypt or to manufacture weapons are basically destroyed. Just yesterday, Israel's troops in combat in the Gaza Strip killed Hamas's smuggling commander, Mohammed Mahasneh, and 45 more terrorists. Israel vowed at the war's outset to end Hamas's ability to again harm the people of Israel. And right now, they can't. Hamas cannot now carry out their promise to do an October 7th massacre again and again. Whatever comes next only succeeds as long as that is true. Before we take questions, a few words to our viewers. For all those asking what you can do to help, there are links to a JGive campaign across our social media. Those donations provide the support we need to keep getting out the word. I'd also ask that you sign up to our email list. We promise we won't bother you with junk mail. This will just allow us to get you our message directly and occasionally share special content. Now, let's take some questions from our audience watching live on social media.
Our first question today comes from Laura on YouTube, who asks, if it's Hezbollah and Hamas leaders who were assassinated, why are we waiting for an Iranian response?
That's a great question. Shuad Fuqar was eliminated by the IDF in Beirut in Lebanon, and we still don't know for sure with 100% certainty who exactly took out Ismail Haniyeh in Iran. But we do know from Iran's response that there is no Hezbollah and there is no Hamas without Iran. And there is no Iran without its terrorist proxies doing its dirty work across the Middle East. I think that the world finally sees what we've been saying for months, if not years, that Iran is the head of the snake and that Hezbollah and Hamas are only its little underlings that are doing its dirty work on Israel's borders. Because remember, Israel doesn't share a border with Iran. When Iran wants to attack Israel, and that's clearly on a daily basis, it must do so with its proxies that are on Israel's border. We know that Hamas would not be anything without Iran. We know that they would not have had the funding to carry out October 7th. They would not have had the training to carry out October 7th. They would not have had the support and the knowledge to carry out October 7th without its overlord, Iran. Same goes for Hezbollah. I once made a video in IDF reserves about the relationship between Hezbollah and Iran, and it would have been shorter to make a video about what Hezbollah and Iran don't have in common. Every step of the way from the 80s to the 90s till this century, every attack that Hezbollah has carried out, whether it was the greatest and most deadly terrorist attack on Argentina's history or whether it was the US barracks in Beirut, every attack that Hezbollah has carried out, Iran has rubber stamped, given the funding for, given the orders for, and given approvals for. So why are we seeing that Israel is waiting for an attack in response to the eliminations from Iran? Because Iran is the father figure, the war overlord, the big boss that takes those kinds of threats seriously to itself. It's not a threat just to Hamas, it's not a threat just to Hezbollah, it's a threat to its leader, Iran.
Our next question today comes from Instagram Live, where Malcolm F asks, why does UNRWA exist? Firstly, Palestinians are not refugees anymore, and second, there is already a UN body for refugees, the UNHCR. So why do the Palestinians get their own group?
That is an excellent question. UNRWA was founded in, I think, 1948, when the Palestinian refugee crisis became a problem. it is no longer a problem. As you said, there are no longer Palestinian refugees. They live in Gaza or they live in the West Bank. Why is there a specific organization dedicated to the refugees, quote unquote, of what is essentially Hamas's government? Because it should be Hamas that is taking care of the basic needs of these people that are in a war that Hamas started. The only reason I can give you is that it's a biased choice from the UN to keep this organization that maybe once had relevance. Maybe in 1948, when people were being relocated, maybe UNRWA had a purpose. Maybe it was really at the time giving aid to Palestinian refugees. But now we are generations into this conflict. People have been born in Gaza. People have raised their own children in Gaza. They are no longer refugees. So the answer to your question is, I don't know. Let's ask the UN. And maybe if the UN continues to prove that UNRWA staff were responsible for taking part in the October 7th massacre, maybe defunding UNRWA once and for all will hit two nails on the head, and we'll be able to get rid of an organization that is only taking taxpayer money to do nothing or worse.
Our next question comes from Deborah Gold, who asks, what can Israel do about Iran's nuclear capabilities?
What can Israel do about Iran's nuclear capabilities? Well, I think there's a couple of options. One, we could launch a preemptive strike on their nuclear sites. I think that would be an escalation that would be catastrophic to the situation right now, but it would certainly be interesting, to say the least. I think what Israel's main responsibility is to take out as much as possible the terrorist armies that are on its border between Hamas and Hezbollah, which get all of their funding and get all of their instructions from Iran. And that's what Israel is doing. Israel is taking out Hamas day by day, day after day, and is taking out Hezbollah, as we saw with the elimination of Fuad Shukr just last week. I think that every day that passes in this war, because Hamas and Hezbollah are getting weaker, Iran is getting weaker too. So about the nuclear site specifically, that is a question for the rest of the G7 countries to decide how are they going to take action, because Israel has its hands full.
Next question comes from Itai Hagag on Instagram, who asks, given the possibility of a wider all-out war in the Middle East, why isn't the entire free world pressuring Lebanon and Iran with sanctions?
That is a fantastic question. I don't have an answer to that. I think that if the free world really understood what was going on at a real deep level, they would be threatening sanctions. But I think that what you see in America and the free world in general that is far away from Israel, they don't understand what it's like to be living in a bomb shelter waiting for Iran to strike at any moment. They don't understand what it's like going to sleep at night, making sure your phone is on full volume in case a red alert goes off and you need to run to your bomb shelter in under a minute. They don't understand what is going on, and they erroneously see the response that we're waiting for from Hezbollah and Iran as a counterattack to our elimination. They don't see it as a next step in the escalation that Iran started on October 7th with its proxy Hamas, and that Hezbollah started on October 8th with its first of its 7,000 rockets, missiles, and drones that they've been attacking us with every single day. If the Western world was really paying attention, which they are not, if they were really paying attention, they would see that Iran started all of this, that Israel is trying to finish it, and that every step that is taken along the way by Iran and Hezbollah to further drag out this forever war is only against the interest of the entire free world and is not for the interest of anyone. So I do think it would be wonderful if the world slapped some sanctions on Lebanon and Iran. And I think, again, that's something to talk to your elected officials about, and why it's so important to be politically active and to be sending emails and to be making phone calls to your elected representatives to say, hey, pay attention to what's going on in Israel. I know there's a lot going on in the world right now, but Israel is at war, and Lebanon and Iran need to be sanctioned because of what they are doing on a daily basis.
And our last question today comes from Ramona on LinkedIn, who asks, any thoughts on Israel's performance in the Olympics?
I have to be honest, I have been a little bit too busy with reserve duty to be following the Olympics so far. I know that the windsurfing Olympics was won by the brother of my former commander, which is really exciting. I want to give a big mazal tov to him. I think besides that, that Israel is doing an amazing job. I've seen that we've had at least 1 gold, at least 2 silvers, and I know that we're doing a great job, especially in the face of the pain that the Israeli Olympians must be going through on a daily basis, seeing what's going on in Israel. So I'm super excited to, when I have some free time, continue to watch the Olympics and see Israel do well and show Israeli strength on the world stage. That's all we have time for today. Thank you all so much for joining. I just want to say that I know that this is an incredibly precarious time and that we are all a lot more stressed than normal. And I just want to say we will get through it. Israel will get through it. We are strong. We can defend ourselves, and it will pass, and everything will be okay. So thank you again so much for watching. Join us again tomorrow at 3 p.m. Israel time, 8 a.m. Eastern time. And in the meantime, stay safe.